Today we're going to be talking about He Never Died. Now, this is one of my more favorite movies of all time, but I will say it occupied a really weird place in my mind because while it was meant to be a comedy, you know, it's more of a dark comedy if anything, but it didn't feel like a comedy. It definitely felt like almost a drama. But, you know, obviously there's lighthearted elements in this, which if you've seen it, that's a hilarious pun. But basically, Henry Rollins, for lack of a better way to say it, kind of inadvertently destroyed what could have been a big franchise. A lot of you watching this probably don't know this, but a lot of the fans and a lot of the people didn't really latch onto this thing until it was after its release. Now, it didn't really release to any kind of big success in theaters, but after this thing started hitting streaming and things like that, this big cult kind of following formed around this movie and around Henry Rollins. And if you go look at any video about this topic, you're going to see people in the comments, probably even of this video, talk extensively about how, damn, I wish they'd do a second one. I wish they would do this. Well, they did do a second one, and we'll get to that in a second. Right now, I want to talk about what really happened with this whole thing. Now, understand this. The movie was made by a director that doesn't have many films under his belt. He got really, in some ways, lucky with this one. Now, I say lucky, it's just that it could have failed, and it looked like a failure to many people. But actually what happened is again, it had that kind of cult following. There's a few movies in history that we know of that kind of like fit this pattern. And whenever this happens, usually they either get revived or they get some kind of big enough following to where it's like people start saying, you know, maybe we should put money into this. Maybe we should do something with this. Well, this is going to be kind of an interesting one because, you know, Henry Rollins is a beloved person. You know, he had a rough start when he was younger, but, you know, he's a rock and roll star and people really gravitate toward him in anything he's in. In fact, he's been in video games like Def Jam, and everyone wanted to see him in this role. They really did. When you watch the movie and you see how he handles it, it's right up his alley, dude. It is everything was made for him to do this role. And what sucks is this. Fans were led to believe, because of the success, after it went to streaming and after it started to be circulated on the aftermarket of movies, fans were led to believe that he was working on the sequel to He Never Died. And wouldn't you know it, everyone was deceived. Okay, and you can't find much online. You're just going to understand, I am dedicated to bringing you guys like something that other people just don't want to do because it's too much work or whatever, but I love this shit. I don't really consider this work. Now, I dug my little hamster fucking disgusting little arms through piles and piles online to find the stuff that I did. And I just kind of want to put it together and show you guys the kind of the story of what happened with this whole thing. And part of that is the fans were completely deceived, but they were led to believe there was going to be He Never Died 2. And he led, the director and like certain other people were leading news outlets on this kind of basis of, oh yeah, Henry Rollins, he's going to be in this thing. Yeah, we're making it. It's coming along. When in reality, none of this was fucking true. Now, to be fair, from some of the articles that I did find, some of them said that he is returning. And you can say whether they should be liable for that or not or whatever. But the point is, they definitely lied. And if they didn't lie, they lied in a way that kept it safe. Where it was like, oh yeah, he should be, but you know, we don't know. You know, however they implied it, they lied, and they had the news coverage of this kind of push this narrative of he's going to be in the next one. Like, just you wait, it's going to be great. And that never materialized. Now, on Rollins' side, you know, if you saw the thumbnail and you were like kind of like, hey, what the fuck? On Rollins' side, it's not necessarily his fault. Now, there's a few things that we're going to go over. And I've got these bullet pointed right in front of me, so if you know, see me looking down here, it's because this is a very interesting story. And it took so much scraping to find the little bits that I did to bring you guys, like, what it really was. So, Rollins, in the past, has openly stated in interviews that he doesn't see himself as an actor. Primarily takes on roles that interest him on a personal level. So, when he took on the original one, 2015, He Never Died, when he took that on, he saw it as like a cool role. He saw it like, ooh, this like fits. Like, I want to do this, you know, because obviously probably doesn't need the money. Let's be honest. But he has never seen himself as an actor because he does all types of stuff. Acting is just another job for him. It's not his whole life, and it will never be. Unfortunately, he's a fucking good actor. He's like really decent, but he's almost decent in a way that's, you almost want him to be typecast because he fits these roles that he does so unbelievably well. And he just never has an on-screen appearance that makes you feel like that he didn't do a good job. It's unfortunate because if Henry Rollins wanted to be an A-list actor, he could. I fully believe he could. And I think there's enough people that would open doors for him just based on the fact that he has people's respect. And he has a lot of friends that are, you know, in high places. But that's the point, right? He never really saw himself as an actor. So while filming this, I was struggling to find stuff about this because it's not really highly covered. Some of the stuff that happens, now this is Rollins' side of it, okay? This is what he says happened. He says that everything was good up until a certain point, and then the script got pulled and rewritten. Someone pulled out investment-wise, and he was told that you can't do the film. Like, he was ready to fly out to Toronto to begin shooting, and then the project got canceled. This is his side of it. This is what he says happened. And basically he was like, okay, I've committed the last part of the year to this. I'm going to do it, and now I'm not going to go do it, and I have no work. Because he committed to a full round of media coverage for this, which means for the past year before even filming, he was hyping it up, and he was going to all these interviews, and he was doing all this extra stuff. So that should be like heavily taken into account. I do not think that this whole thing was Rollins' fault. I think most of the blame lies on the director and possibly his shady ways that he gets his money injected. I mean, listen, investments can always be pulled out, but unfortunately that's what happened in this one. But man, after an investment being pulled out, like as you're filming, just understand that there's usually contracts in place that would not allow for this kind of thing. So however he's doing it is not exactly, you know, maybe not exactly like who you want to be going through for a loan or for an investment in your movie. But he was basically completely abandoned by the studio and just hadn't heard anything. And in his own words, he personally thought that part 2 was cool. It had fantastic violence, and he just thought it's going to be an amazing movie. He really believed in the second script because it didn't exactly stay the same as the first movie. It really picked up and didn't leave you needing to know some backstory. It picked up and everything went forward really quickly, and the fans would have loved it, because we didn't get a lot of that in the first one. We got a lot of backstory. We got a lot of slow pacing, slow burn kind of stuff, whereas this one would have been more focused on, you know, the backstory and like learning more, and then the action. But like after having found this, I do think that you know, while I do have the thumbnail and blah blah blah, most of the blame is gonna fall on the director, on the people who he does his investments with. And you know, he had to completely rewrite the script, and it shows. He had to rewrite the script in a short amount of time to continue filming on the budget that they had set out with. And it shows in the film. Like, it's not well thought out like this movie would have been. The reason that this even got pushed through is because I think the director understood this cult following. Now, the first movie was made for under $5 million. I do know that. It was made for somewhere under $5 million. Unfortunately, the director did not get this bankrolled by anyone. I think they might be self-financing, and the thing about self-financing is they don't have to report it. Like, Disney is a publicly traded company. Pretty much all of when you look up like, the budget for a film, right? This is all public stuff. But from the nearest I could find, the number closest was $5 million to do the whole movie. And dude, that's cheap. That's cheap in Hollywood. Believe it or not, it is. And this director probably self-funded most of that. And it didn't pay back at first. At least at first. But understand that they do have these streaming deals where they keep revenue going because people are watching this. You know, they see the numbers that they're pulling on these services, and they keep getting renewed, which means obviously, I think the last time I seen they were on Prime, and they're on a couple other places, but just understand this: when you get renewed, that means people are watching, okay? And they give you a certain contract in order to, you know, keep things moving along. They give you a certain contract, and they give you a certain number, and they say, you know, we're going to pay for this. Now, every contract is different. Sometimes they get paid up front, like, hey, here's $100,000, we'll have it for a year. That could be the simplest way. And then the lowest way is having it just based on a viewership. And that's what you can find stuff like that, more like on Amazon and stuff like that, where you can like put your project on there for free. So that's really where it headed. I don't think that he liked the premise of the script, and he didn't see that the first one did real well. He didn't understand that it had this cult following. But this new story direction, the filmmaker decided to pivot, and he put out this new movie in 2019 under the premise that they were making a second one. He didn't say fucking nothing up until the very last bit when they released this, and most of the fans of this fucking movie didn't know anything about this movie coming out. Why? He slid it under the radar. I think in some worlds he said, hey, I've got a cult hit. You know, this is going to be a big thing. He probably got people to invest their time and money. And the reality is, this thing was never going to pay off. He had to rewrite the script. He spent all this time. You know, it's 2015 to 2019. That means they were filming at least in 2018 for this thing. And essentially what happened with this is he cast a completely new person, and the film is called She Never Died, and it's 2019. And quite frankly, this film is nowhere near as good as the first one. It's not as charming. It feels more low budget. It feels like something's off the whole time. And the hard part is, like, listen, guys, the hard part is, like, the people who loved the first one wanted to love this. They did. They even tried. And you can look at the reviews. People just desperately wanting to love this thing, and they don't want to badmouth it because they're like, man, you know, I really liked the first one. But the reality is it underperformed in several ways. The acting was off. The acting was absolutely off. And I'm not talking about just the main actor. I'm talking about the whole cast. And the way that they set it up, it's almost like a fucking reboot of the first one. Except for, and for those of you who care, I realize this is a sensitive topic, they cast an African-American woman, whose name I will not even try to pronounce because I don't speak the language and I would butcher it. That's not a big deal in and of itself, okay? But a lot of fans have said that the positioning that they put her in versus the character of Jack, it's like, dude, she's an immortal, right? Like, that's kind of like the whole point of the films. And if you've never seen the films, this becomes very apparent, okay? This is not a huge spoiler. But they put her in this situation where they have her, she can't function, she's homeless, and all of this. And this is a huge problem because that's not the position he was put in. Now, the position that he was in essentially was a much better position and made more sense and felt real. Like he's I don't want to give too much away because if you watch the movie, you know, this is important. But the positions and the level of success and the family dynamic and everything made so much more sense than the second one where, and this is not a spoiler, she's essentially just some fucking homeless chick. It felt like the pivot, and so this is maybe the fault of the writing having to shift away to make this new film. Okay? I don't think this was their fault necessarily. I think they had to shift the entire film, and they had to do it in a short amount of time because they knew that they were setting up to film. You know, because they would have had the script done and getting people in on it. They failed to get Henry Rollins, and they had to pivot the whole movie. Well, it didn't work out at all. Now, there's another thing is the second movie is lower budget. And, you know, it's crazy because a lot of you watching this are just now finding out that there's even a second movie. That's nuts. I know. They really kept it under the radar. Now, I told you that the first one was made for $5 million. I do not know whether they got the funding for this other movie because this one is kept tight. There's no leaks about it. It's very hard to pin down the numbers, but it does feel like part of the reason that all of this happened was because they couldn't secure the funding to get Rollins interested to come back. Now, I don't know how much they paid him for the original role, and we might never know, but it wouldn't have to be some big significant number to get him because he's not that type of guy. Like in all the roles he's ever done, he's not being paid millions, and he just does them if he thinks it speaks to him, you know, which is a fair point. But the studio might not have been able to get the funding, and the second one does feel weaker. Now, the last thing that I want to talk about in this kind of section is the standalone storytelling, okay? He Never Died, it left a lot of room for continuation, okay? It functions super well. It's a very self-contained story. But She Never Died, even though it followed a similar theme, okay? Even though it followed a similar theme, does not directly continue his story. And even though they're calling it a sequel, it's not a fucking sequel. It's not. It is a thematic successor at best, but it's not a sequel. And quite frankly, I don't know if we'll ever get a sequel. Now, we're going to move on and we're going to talk about the fans' reactions regarding She Never Died and Henry Rollins not returning. Because I think this is super important to frame. And now listen, guys, I did a lot of work here. I combed through thousands of comments. And I kind of compiled it. And it was a lot of work. The point is, I compiled it, I looked through a bunch, and I kind of got the main themes down that everyone, because it felt like everyone was talking about the same shit. Obviously, the first one is they were all disappointed that Rollins didn't return. That was obviously number one, with over like half of the comments expressing that, even though they were expressing other ideas. You know, many fans were hoping for a direct sequel with Henry Rollins to continuing his role as Jack. And obviously that did not happen. I think a lot of fans were confused. And this next one expresses some of that. Confusion over the new lead. Some didn't understand why the film introduced a completely different character instead of following up on Jack's story. Now, we've talked about this, but this is something you gotta realize. This movie was good enough. You know, the marketing sucked. That's all that happened. The marketing was weak, and when everyone found out about this, they fell in love with it and they wanted more. But they were led to believe that he was returning, which is crazy, because you don't think that someone would hurt their reputation with this being one of their only successful things. And in my projections, this franchise could have went on to make, like, this would have taken this director to like a whole different level, and all of it hinged on just pulling this off, and they just simply couldn't. So one of the third things was feeling misled by the title. Title made it seem like a sequel, but many felt it was more of a reboot, a spinoff, or a ripoff, rather than a true continuation. Some people in the comments actually believed that this movie wasn't even made by the guys who made it because it was that different. They thought someone was ripping it off because, one, marketing for this was way worse than the first one, okay? The marketing for this was so under the fucking radar, no one even knew it came out. And these were hardcore fans, and you can see how they might think, dude, is this like someone just ripping off the entire movie and just changing the name, you know, changing their homework a little just so no one notices? The next one is the creative direction and criticism. Some fans thought that She Never Died lacked humor, charm, uniqueness, and it did. It was a fucking vacuum, man. It was just another low budget picture instead of what they pulled off with the first one. And they felt that those things actually made He Never Died special. While people were disappointed in the lack of the return of Rollins, some fans appreciated the new lead's acting and physical presence. Now, I wanted to mention this because earlier I talked about the casting choices and kind of how the movie felt. A number of people did think that she did a good job. And while she didn't do a bad job, you have to realize that this is simply like determined by taste. A fair number of these people just expressed like they didn't mind a new movie and a new story. You know, it sucks that he wasn't there to do this next movie, but they definitely thought that she did okay. But this is the thing. Given the material that she had to work with, and given the situation that this actor was put in, if you ever see the second movie, you'll understand that how can you really show how good of an actor you are if the second one doesn't give you any dynamics to do that? I shit you not when I say this, okay? Because she was one of the better actors in the entire film. She spends, I would say, conservatively, 30% of the movie growling. Okay? And I'm not kidding when I say this. Literally 30% of this movie is just her making growling noises. Because for some reason, Jack's character has this intelligent, salt of the earth like understanding of things. She just growls at people. Like there's no way for me to put this into words to get you to see how fucking dumb it is, other than you should watch the film and just be in awe of it. Just go, wow, this is really cringe. You know, like it was a weird thing. It was a weird thing, and yet people thought she was still good. And again, I don't think this has to do with much of like her, as it's really put on the script. This is an actor being told, okay, in this scene, you're going to growl again. You're going to sit there and the bad guys are in the corner and you're going to growl at them. Like, okay, what's she supposed to do with garbage like that? What's she supposed to do? So for the parts that she was actually allowed to act, people thought, yeah, she did okay. Compared to the rest of the movie, not that bad. And that's what fans do. They try to find these like little redeeming things in something that they love, even if it's these little redeeming like little droplets of water in a desert. And unfortunately that's what this movie was. I mean, simply put, we've put a lot of time and effort into talking about this subject. The budget was just bad, or the production people had changed over from this movie to that movie. Either way, my suspicion is he had more money to go into the first one, and unfortunately I think that was his big shot, and he killed it. He absolutely did a fantastic job, but not securing the second one, his world would be so much different. Because that brings us to one of our last things that people talked about, which is the missed opportunity for expansion. That's the whole point of this video. So I really had to sit down and I had to think about what I was going to say in this video. And, it hurts because the movie was worth more than it was. We get a lot of these movies out here nowadays, and we feel like we're just like, I don't know what the word is, but you're watching them like, why the fuck am I watching this? We get a lot of those movies now, and this was one of those that felt good to watch. It felt like it was saying something. Felt like it was really entertaining. It wasn't just car crashes and little quibs, while people are dying. You look at the Marvel movies and you see that. You see all this chaos and all this stuff, and they're like, haha, I know that was a bus full of people, but, let's make a joke right now. Like, and, this movie had all the right stuff. And that will bring me to the last thing, is many believe that He Never Died had the potential for a full-fledged franchise, with Jack's character having more stories to tell. And, maybe this video won't reach anyone, but like, let's say that it did get in front of people that have those choices or have that freedom to influence things, like they know these people in real life. That would be really cool, because I think this whole video isn't really about Henry Rollins. It's about like the movie could have spun out into more, and it could have been really great for a lot of people, and it just didn't get that chance. And it sucks, because how many of us have sat here thinking of movies that were just either ahead of their time or, you know, fizzled out for no reason. And we think, damn, you've got so many of these movies doing so well that don't deserve it. But then you've got pieces like this that like need the love. They like need the love, because if we had more stuff like this, we'd be a lot happier, I think, as a society. Right now, it's like, you know, we're kind of being sold the same repackaged garbage. So if you take away anything from this, just take away this. I love the movie. I love that Henry Rollins was cast in it. I wish we had gotten more, but I just don't think we will. Unfortunately, the director hasn't made very much and might not continue to make much, because when people look at his track record, you know, the graph goes down. And we live in a world where people like that sometimes don't get second chances. Okay? Sometimes writers, directors, and actors get these big chances, and if they don't execute it properly, those things don't stay forever. And then after a while, no one cares. And I'll say this, if you did love the first movie, we're both in the same position. It sucks, but it is what it is. I'm just going to say this out here for everybody. I've got links to my Discord in the description. And I've got, I want, if you have a movie that you love, put it in the comments. Maybe we make a video about it. Maybe we, you know, throw your name up there. Whatever. Kind of the point of this channel is to show people different movies and the love of different things. And if you want to go ahead and do that and throw your movie down there that you love, that you think that someone else might love, go ahead and do that.